Well, it's been really good to be here, and the presentations to date have been really interesting. So thank you, Matt, and thank you, Ree, for the initiative of bringing us all together to help us all take Auckland forward and get Auckland built. So apologies from Doug Naylor today. He's down with the flu, so being a reporter, it was stepping into the breach, which I'm happy to do for Doug. So quite often Doug starts his team meetings or presentations with a joke, and he landed us one the other day which is straight out of a Christmas cracker. So what has wheels and flies? Rubbish truck. A rubbish truck, yeah. So anyways, so let's move on. So the whole message that probably I want to tell you today, which is the point of this particular presentation, is that Doug, and particularly Ian McCormick, who's head of our building division, is very keen on working with you and being involved in the industry as opposed to being external to the industry. So that's one key message that I want to leave you with today, is we want to look at opportunities of partnering with you and to be more productive and more collaborative in what we all do. So what I thought we'd do is we've got 5 slides, and it would be helpful to benchmark sort of where we've been and look at opportunities of what we're doing now to bring things forward and gain efficiencies, and then some of the issues that we're jointly confronting out there. So the first slide, which I better put up. There we go. So where have we been? So under the old model, pre-amalgamation, there were 4 main service centres, Takapuna, Central, Waitakere and Manukau. And there were additional satellite service centres as well who had a lesser scope of providing service. So in particular in Manukau, a fairly complex structure with 4 options for you as far as building consents went, and they were both public and private entities, and that is a legacy that came out of Manukau Council. So there was the Manukau itself, there was MBC and PBC and Compass, who are 3 private providers. And the issue that came up out of these multiple consenting authorities and agencies is that each office had their own way of delivering core services, and that also too would encapsulate administration, inspections, compliance, the whole gamut of delivering a built property. And of course each area office was individually managed and had different structures and different team leaders, different ways of processing, different inspection regimes, and also the same with different compliance requirements. And the summary really of that is that the area office model delivered inconsistencies, and what I've just covered with administration, service delivery, technical interpretation, consent application processes, documentation, inspection regimes, and so the list goes on. So the feedback that was coming back to the building division, particularly from Ian McCormick, was that we needed to do things better. So he set up a customer feedback group and liaison group, and held monthly surveys with customers, and that also included staff, staff feedback with a view to gaining better efficiencies. So the key to it that was coming back really was there needs to be greater investment in improving the process, and both operationally and compliance-wise, to all aspects of building control. So the commitment really that is being made presently is to improve productivity, and particularly to achieve consistency across the region. And that involves with lodgement protocols, processing, inspections, and the code compliance process sign-off. and there's a commitment to try and harmonise the customer experience. So no matter which office you're dealing with, or which office you're lodging with, etc., it is consistent. So that then extends out to consistency in our forms and our policies, trying to eliminate variations of interpretation, which is a biggie. And that's not only as consents are being processed too, but variations when you get an inspector on site as well, different interpretations and feedback to those that are on site doing things. Importantly too, the driver is towards minimising consenting costs, always a hot topic of discussion. And the big one, I guess, for you folks sitting there too, is improving the approval timeline. So what we really want to try and achieve is reducing cost, being consistent, and right across the region. So on with the next slide. So that was the old, and now with the restructure that has been rolled out, which is pretty fresh off the blocks, it's more based on a functional model. So with the Super City, there was a structure that was preordained, and that was done by the Auckland Transitional Authority, and it was locked in place for 2 years, if you recall, and that was from the late 2010 or thereabouts. And there was an embargo for 2 years to leave that structure that was given to Auckland Council to leave it in place. And come May 2014, the restructure has finally gone live for the building division. So just to give you an idea of scale, there are over 547 full-time employees in the division, operating out of 12 locations, and not forgetting the islands too, which is Waiheke and Great Barrier, for which we have responsibility as well. So the building division now, with a new regime and new structure, is able to respond more appropriately to customer and stakeholder feedback. So you would appreciate this has been a massive undertaking for the building division. So the key changes that have been brought down with the new structure is to move towards a more of a regional functional model. And we now have functional managers, which I'll touch on shortly, who are responsible for individual areas, operational areas, such as processing, inspections, policy, legal, and dealing with claims across the region regarding weather tightness. So what we've done here is just put a short list of key managers, and up the top there is Ian McCormick, has got responsibility for building control right across the region. And reporting to Ian is Doug Naylor, who is the manager processing. And an interesting part too of the conundrum that was faced by where do you put senior managers geographically to actually spread them around the region. And so Doug has taken on office space in Takapuna primarily, and also works out of Central. Ian, of course, is in the central office in Graham Street. Reporting to Doug, you've got Jeff Farrenson, who has got responsibilities for north and western part of the city, and he is based out west. You've got Gagan Saxena, who has got responsibilities for the central and southern part of the region, and he's based in the central office, where there's a higher degree of commercial approvals. Myself in Central, and importantly too, those that know Ali Darug has just taken on a new role as Principal Technical Advisor. Quite often we have a lot of feedback and inquiries about technical matters in association with the regulations and the code. And Ali is going to take a lead on that and bringing consistency across the region, and he'll be based in Takapuna. Just moving down to the Regional Manager for Inspections is Tim Waite, and he's based in Central. The man in the north reporting to Tim is Jason Wang. Apologies for the typo there, it should be Wang. And he's got responsibilities for the Northern and Western Office and is going to be based in Orewa primarily. And Jason Rue, as some may recall, was involved with MBC in the South, is Inspection Manager for Central and South, and will be based primarily in Manukau. Another recent appointment too, and it's not on the slide there, is Barry Smets, who has taken on the role of Manager Compliance, always an interesting aspect of council life, the compliance side, and taking responsibility for pools and building compliance. And then following that, you've got Rose McLaughlin, who is based centrally with her team. Her umbrella takes in training and quality assurance, and appointments have yet to be finalised for that. Now, the big one for Rose at the moment is BCA accreditation, which is a massive undertaking for our organisation, and that's due in a couple of months' time. And the IANZ, who are a government-appointed body, will be coming into our offices across the region and doing an audit on how we do things. So part of the training and quality assurance also is staff competency, and that is both on the processing side and also on the inspection side as well. So every year there are annual competency assessments. And of course, of interest too under Rose is the seismic performance of buildings, and a position is yet to be finalised for that. Moving on, we've got Sally Gray, who's got a legal background and is based in Central, and she's heading up the claims team, and has also got responsibilities for our technical specialists and interests in durability and reclads. And of course, to support all that, you need an administration manager, which is Pam Stiles, who's based centrally but with key staff spread across the region as well. And Mike Smith supports the division and is based in Central and has a lot of interaction with Wellington and local politicians as well. So what are the expectations of the new model? So the expectations really are that regional policy, as I mentioned before, so it needs to be clear and it needs to be consistent across the region. We hear you. So, technical competency too, which is another challenge which I've just mentioned, and that involves not only assessments but also training. And where staff are struggling with competency, there needs to be a training bridge established to actually bring them up to the expected standard. So part of the assessment too is to gain knowledge of where the gaps are from a technical point of view. So IANZ, as I mentioned before, are approved entity and report to MB and Wellington, and one of their primary drivers is Regulation 10, which says that there must be a systematic assessment process in place, and there are other documents too which explain that it needs to be annual. A consideration that possibly needs to be made by you folk out in the professional world too is what competency assessments have you in place for your organisation. Also too, we're looking at capacity sharing across the region. The advantage of being one regional body is to move demand and move resource around the region to deal with local happening in a particular patch. We're also looking to at expanding risk-based processing partnerships, which I'll talk about shortly. Also too, we want to try and align with the industry, which is what we're doing here today, and partnering with you out in the industry. So we want to work collaboratively with you. And also to an important aspect which we hear back from you is enhancing our responsiveness not only to applicants but also to you and the industry and also to local and central government. So future expectations from the model that's been put in place. First of all is increased innovation, which is an interesting aspect of council life. So there's a willingness to do things smarter and more efficiently. And we want to try and nurture good ideas, which involves you folk as well. So we want to try and increase standardisation, and that's already taken place in the likes of application forms, policy documents, and also standardise our processing. So we want to communicate better with you, which is what we're doing here today. And council really, or the building division, wants to be in the middle of this particular group of the industry and wants to meet with you and engage with you to work together as a team, which really is, as I said at the start of this presentation, is one of the key messages that I want to leave with you today. So what's going on as far as the future? So already in place there's been various trials. So we've got Standard Dwelling Partnership, which has been operational since February this year. And that initiative really is working with group housing providers, and it's been a methodology of formulating efficient consenting and approval processes. Then we've got the pilot for terraced housing, which is an extension of the Standard Dwelling Partnership and involves dealing with buildings that are more complex, and that's currently a work in progress. Then we, as we've already heard from the previous speakers too, we're working with the Special Housing Office to support them with their work program, and the driver there is to try and get pre-approvals and working with designers so that by the time the consents actually land formally with us for approval, there's minimum time delay. And one of those initiatives that we're going to trial, it's just about in place, is the likes of a planning certificate where the consultant planner will endorse, a bit like a producer statement, will endorse that the application is complying with what's already been agreed with the Special Housing Office. We're looking too at aspects from the development engineering side of life as well, that the infrastructure, the connection points and the other civil engineering issues too have already been addressed, so that by the time the building consent is lodged there are no issues in that regard. We've also been involved in a pilot commercial approval and construction process, a very interesting one, and that was based on a quality plan. And the two projects that we engaged on was a simple distribution warehouse type structure with supporting office, quite simple structures. We had a well-known developer, a builder and holder of their developments, who was willing to work with us, and that worked out very well. One interesting point of the constructor feedback that we had was he was surprised at the status of the various technical specialists who were coming to site to sign off the various aspects of construction. So senior members of the consultancy were coming out as opposed to the office grunter, so that was interesting feedback. So we're also looking at electronic processing, and we're trialling Assist in Christchurch. So a number of consents have already gone through for that. But the big challenge really from a corporate point of view is our IT systems, and currently there's a rollout in progress of getting commonality with our IT systems. Another interesting aspect too, which has just been rolled out this month, is a trial with inspectors with tablets which they'll take to site. So at the moment, the scope of that is to give them access to technical documents, and as time goes by, you'll be able to get pass and fail information for inspections downloaded immediately into our IT system. So other items that are coming up too is we want to try and address the high number of consent suspensions, which I guess is the bane of most applicants' life. So that means that we need to enhance the quality of applications that we receive. So we really want to try and reduce the amount of administration and lost time with rejected consents. And in that regard too, I'd highly recommend that you work with your clients, particularly on larger or complex projects, to come and talk to us and engage with a pre-application meeting for your particular project. That can be at any stage. It could be a staged pre-application process that we go through. So I guess in summary, where we've been to is individual officers and individual systems, confusion, delay, and we want to and are addressing that through the new regional management rollout, and particularly in this type of engagement with you, is that we want to keep things appropriate, quick, simple, and lift the standard of consenting and construction processes in the Auckland region. That's it.